I want to start tonight with what feels like it might be an important new stage in the war between Israel and Hamas. Now, we don't want to overstate things. I want to be clear that the big picture remains the same. Israel, in response to the terrorist attack by Hamas that killed more than 1,000 Israeli civilians, has continued its airstrikes inside the densely populated Gaza Strip. While there's been so much expectation as to whether Israel is going to launch a ground invasion and when they're going to do that, in the meantime, they have launched these devastating airstrikes day after day after day. More than 4,000 people in Gaza are believed to have been killed since the Israeli retaliation for the Hamas terrorist attacks began 17 days ago. Civilians cannot leave Gaza still, even including the U.S. citizens who are among the civilians there. But the first trickle of aid has been allowed in. A small convoy of aid trucks was allowed in on Saturday, and then another convoy was allowed in on Sunday, and then another small convoy was allowed in today. And that is good. That is not enough, but that is something. The aid that has come in thus far does not involve fuel. And while fuel might not seem like the most important thing to supply when you're talking about humanitarian aid, the UN is raising urgent concerns about the remaining hospitals inside Gaza and whether they can keep their generators running, to keep electricity on inside the hospitals, to keep things like ventilators running and life support machines for people who are grievously ill and also for newborn babies. The U.S. military has moved considerable resources and personnel to the region. There are ongoing worries about the conflict potentially broadening to include other countries and other armed militias in the region. The U.S. embassies, both in Iraq and in Lebanon, have sent out new warnings about the safety of U.S. citizens and U.S. diplomatic staff and their families. So, all that to say, the biggest of big pictures here remains as precarious as ever, but there is a tiny little bit of hope on one piece of it tonight. We saw two hostages who had been taken by Hamas, an Israeli-American mother and daughter, get released on Friday. Tonight, two more hostages have been released. This is two frail, elderly Israeli women, both in their 80s, both of whom have been held by Hamas for more than 2 weeks. The two of them were released tonight. There had been some reports today about the potential release of a much larger group of hostages, maybe 4 dozen or more hostages potentially set to be released in some sort of arrangement. But NBC has not been able to confirm independently any of those reports. They remain just a glimmer for people who are trying to maintain hope here. So far, only 4 hostages have been released. Joining us now is NBC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel, live from Jerusalem. Richard, thank you so much for being here. I know it's the middle of the night, 4 in the morning there. I really appreciate you.
It's always the middle of the night with you, Rachel. No matter where you go in the country, it's always the middle of the night, and it's always talking about something grim. But yes, how are you?
It's true. I'm okay, Richard. It's true. We need to come up with some other beat that you and I cover together and at better times. But Richard, let me ask you about the hostage situation. Obviously, everybody's overjoyed to see 2 hostages released on Friday, to see 2 more released today. There was some reporting today, which NBC has not independently confirmed, that maybe we should expect additional hostage releases in larger numbers. What's your understanding of that? And what do we know about these older women who are released today?
So what we're trying to do is to track these negotiations in real time through the negotiators. But obviously the negotiators are working with Hamas, working with the Israeli authorities. Primarily, we're talking about Egyptian and Qatari negotiators. And it is a very, very difficult process to follow because obviously for security reasons, they don't want to give away too much. But they are actively trying to trade things. The Hamas wants certain things. It wants the sort of more access for humanitarian supplies into the Gaza Strip. It wants some of its prisoners to be released. It wants to engage in a kind of resumption of a peace process to have a path towards statehood. We're hearing more and more from Hamas about its specific demands. I spoke to a senior Hamas leader tonight about these specific issues. And there is hope that there will be more. And during the day today, I was one of those people who thought, okay, there's going to be more. There was these rumors, reports of a potentially larger group that could have come out today, but these negotiations don't always go well. And even when these two Israeli women were eventually released, Hamas released them, but sort of issued a complaint saying, we're releasing them even though Israel violated the terms of our agreement 8 times. And there had been, although we didn't notice it, a mini ceasefire, a pause for a few hours today, according to Hamas, and another pause, it said, was 6 hours long in the airstrikes on Friday. So they're negotiating things big and small. Sometimes it's just a pause for a few hours, or much larger issues about opening access to the Gaza Strip, potentially prisoner swaps, potentially more than that. So this could take some time, and every time that there is hope, there is a lot of chance that things could go wrong, that there's another airstrike, changed in complications. Communications are difficult because this senior Hamas leader told me tonight the hostages are held in different places. Communication from one place to the other is difficult, so that they're facing some logistical challenges just to gather these people and try and free them if they want. Now, that could be Hamas coming up with excuses, but you said, is it a glimmer of hope? Yes, at least there's some movement. At least they're not executing these hostages in a one every hour or anything like that. There does seem to be some progress. There are lines of communication to Hamas, and there are efforts ongoing by friendly nations to try and secure these release of these people.
Richard, it strikes me as a pretty incredible thing in its own right that you've been in touch with senior Hamas officials about this issue. Do they explain, or do they put it to you in any way that that you can convey to us why they took these hostages, and if they planned from the outset that they would hold these hostages in order to try to extract concessions or ceasefires or any other things that they're asking for now as just the first 4 of them had been let go. It almost feels, from some of the reporting that I've seen about the hostage taking, that Hamas didn't necessarily know what they were going to do with these civilian hostages when they got them, let alone in these large numbers, more than 200 of them. Did they give you any sense, any clarity on what their intention was or what their intentions are in the long run with these people?
My interpretation, and some of this is just my analysis of having covered this for a long time, covered the Middle East, covered Hamas for many years. I think they bit off more than they could chew, and that what we're seeing in Gaza is a result of Hamas not realizing how far it was going to get, how devastating its attack would be, how many people they would take. The group has also hinted at that. There was one statement from their chief military spokesman, Abu Ubaidah, who said that they swept up all these foreign nationals by accident, because as people were being dragged over the border, they didn't have a chance, this is according to them, to verify their identities, and they ended up with too many non-Israelis. So even they acknowledge that it was a chaotic time and that they ended up with more people than they wanted. Now, on the other question, what do they want to do with them? They clearly intended to take people. They clearly went in to kill people and capture people, but probably not this many, and probably not this many foreign nationals, bringing the entire world against them. What they want is they want concessions. They every time they've taken people in the past, they have been able to secure the release of prisoners. Many of the top Hamas leaders themselves, the inner circle of Hamas who are running the group now, were themselves prisoners in Israeli jails who were swapped when other members of Hamas grabbed an Israeli soldier and then demanded, and then part of their demands was a prisoner release. So the top leadership themselves know this process from personal experience. It secured their own release. So I think at the end, as we get closer and more and more hostages come out, and hopefully that will happen. Hopefully that will happen soon and in larger numbers. I think we're going to start hearing not just demands about more access for humanitarian aid into Gaza and more access for fuel and other things, but they'll start asking for more specifically for the demands of prisoners, and they've already said that as well. One of the Hamas leaders I was talking to said, in order to release the soldiers, and they make a distinction between the civilians and the soldiers. Although here in Israel with Hamas, it's quite difficult because a lot of Israelis, until they're quite old, can potentially be reservists in this country. So who gets considered a soldier is a little bit up to Hamas's interpretation. But they have said for the soldiers, not specifying exactly who they consider a soldier. If you're active duty, non-active duty, serving in uniform, out of uniform, etc., they said they want the release of all Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, and there are thousands of them.
Wow. Richard Engel, chief foreign correspondent for NBC News. This has been a day of real ups and downs, specifically on this issue of the Israeli hostages. Thanks for keeping us up to date and keeping us honest on this, Richard. I appreciate it, my friend.
Sure thing.